Hi, hope you're doing well today. This is number 21 in the Develop Sight Reading Etudes. This one's a little bit different. It says J.S. Bach. I have no idea what piece this is. Sorry, my horn's a little bit cool today because I have the air conditioning on. This is written in 2-1. Now we know 4-4 and 2-4 and 6-8 and 3-8, but 2-1 you don't see very much. And so what does that mean? So all you music theory people know that there are two beats in a bar and a one note or a whole note gets the beat. I haven't seen that too many places, but actually you do see it in a fair amount of Renaissance music and music of that period. But we're not used to reading that way, and I think that's one of the reasons why Mr. Dufresne and Voisin decided to include something like this. So it seems like it's pretty slow because, I mean, you know, all you see is like these football notes, half notes and whole notes, but actually it moves right along. And it says à la brève, which means in two, indicated by the time signature. So I'm going to play through and see if I can make it. So here's number 21. Well, it's got some jumpy spots in it. Now, the main thing about this is it's actually very simple, and it's the kind of thing we do every day. You have a big beat. So that's your whole note beat. And then you have a subdivided beat. D, 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 D. The problem is that subdivided beat is a half note, so we're not used to seeing it that way. So what I'm going to recommend is whenever you encounter music that's written like this, or music that's kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, where you have maybe very, very small note values, which look like they should be really, really fast, but maybe the tempo is not all that fast, then you can easily translate those rhythmic values into other values. For example, instead of thinking a whole note gets the beat, I could think of this in 2-4, and a quarter note gets the beat. Now, if I went through the whole piece, that means I'm going to have, well, what? 1/4 of the value. So a half note is going to be like an eighth note. And the eighth notes are going to be what? 30-second notes? Yeah, 30-second notes. Which you hear at the end. Dee da da dee da 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 dee dee da digga da digga da da dee dee da da dee digga 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 da 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 dee. So you could, it actually would be easier to read, I think, if you wrote it in 2-4 rather than in 2-1. So that's pretty easy to get past that kind of difficulty. But where are other difficulties? Well, in a lot of these etudes, they're written, if I may say so, in a kind of anti-musical way. In other words, the phrases and the groups of notes that should go together musically are not so apparent. So a good way to start is start with the way it's constructed. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's in 2-1. That means at the beginning of every bar, you're going da, dee, da, da. The very first note is a pickup. 1. So you see I'm kind of marking 1, 1, and 1, and that's the feel all the way through. That gives me a kind of a structure. It gives me an anchor point on the beginning of the bar. It's very helpful sometimes visually to see where the beginning of the bar is. That's pretty easy. But also the middle of the bar. And as I've said before, it helps you kind of know where you are in the bar. Most of the problems that people have is they're trying to count and not necessarily keeping track of where they are in the flow of the music, especially where it's going to, not necessarily where it came from. So in a sense, this is pretty straightforward, and it sounds a little syncopated. I'm going to play a section, the end of the third line, last 2 bars of the third line, and play it under tempo. So instead of in 2, I'll play it in 4. You see I'm kind of conducting and playing at the same time. Now, if you're not used to doing that, it might feel a bit awkward. But if you stick with the pattern, either doing it a la breve in 2 or in 4 if you're practicing in a slower tempo, and you at first you might just move 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 1. Okay, that gives you a grip. Now you're doing something with your bodily movement that conducts where the beats are. Now that's a little bit of a distraction. If you're concentrating on how to play the trumpet, it's going to feel pretty awkward to do that. But it's an extremely useful skill, and one that all experienced musicians use, most of them unconsciously. For example, if you're playing in a smaller ensemble, like a brass quintet, let's say, or you're playing in a jazz combo, for instance, even with a rhythm section that is kind of controlling and supporting the movement, the time of the piece, there's still a lot of communication going on between the different players. In a brass quintet, which many of you may have played in, then each person has personal responsibility for maintaining the flow of the tempo and the feeling of the time, and often that responsibility is passed around the group. So when you learn how to gesture, and I'm not talking about going, 1, 2, 3, I'm making big gestures. I'm talking about mostly feeling it. Dee da dee da dee da da dee da dee da 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 dee da da dee da dee. See, I'm doing that without playing. Now that's a little bit easier. It takes a little bit of strain off your mind because you're not trying to do too many things at once. Eventually, you want to kind of break the barrier of the bar lines and break the barrier of the rigid vertical feeling of the tempo. Or I shouldn't say break it, I should say include that feeling of the subdivision in the longer line. So the next thing I want you to try and do with all these pieces as you're working through the book, if indeed you're doing so, is see if you can hear what the natural note groupings are or the natural phrases are. So I'm going to start at the beginning. So it seems most of the musical content is just, he puts you in a key, he makes it clear by playing a scale in the key, and that kind of sets up the next phrase. I'm looking for the music. If you just play the notes, this is not all that interesting. If it is indeed Bach, and if somebody out there knows what it is, please let me know. I'm not a musicologist, sorry I can't help you with that. Then that can help you a little bit to know, how should this be, what's the context? Is this written as a solo instrument piece, like the flute sonatas, the violin sonatas, the cello sonatas? Or is it written as part of another piece? My guess is part of another piece, which means you're going to get harmony, probably, if it's an ensemble piece of some kind. And there may be vocalists involved with it, as there is in a lot of Bach's music. So I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but I'm searching. It's like, where is the music in this? It's hard to find with just this melodic line and these kind of jumpy syncopated rhythms. So another good thing to do, which I've mentioned for you to do, is play it at different tempi, and that goes back to, well, I can feel it in 4, I can feel it in 2, I can feel it in 8, obviously. And those will give you, gives you kind of access to the different things that you might be able to do with the music. Something else that comes up in this, and I'll mention it much more when we look at the Charlier, which I'm hoping to do before too long, is the articulation is very clear. There's some notes that are slurred, and some notes that are tongued, and when you see that, you want to be mindful of it, even if it doesn't make sense at first to you, just because you're kind of honoring the intention of the composer. If there are mistakes, you can find that out and hopefully correct them. There's one quick thing I'll mention where many people can make a mistake. There is a double sharp on the last bar of the 3rd line from the bottom of the piece. And it's on an 8th note, so it goes by very quickly. It's an F double sharp. And then at the end of that bar, there's another F, which could be just an F sharp from the key signature, but it is a double sharp because that external carries through. Now that's something that it's easy to miss. If you catch it, congratulations, you get a gold star for the day. But if you miss it, that's very understandable because we don't have a harmonic context. We don't know what the music is supposed to sound like. So that was a quick tour through large note values at a faster tempo, and I hope you got something out of it. Check this one out and see if you can make more sense out of it than I can. And if you want to make a recording of it and send it to me, I'll appreciate that. Have a good day. Enjoy your practice. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.